We're going to start looking at fractions. And before we do, we need to remind ourselves of whole numbers and integers. And if you remember, an integer or a whole number is 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., all the way to infinity. And they also include negative numbers as well, so -1, -2, etc., all the way up, all the way down. These are all whole numbers. So we can answer what is a fraction by saying that a fraction is part of a whole number. And so here we have this number here, this fraction here, and this is a quarter. And you'll see that fractions are written in this format. There's a number on top, which is the numerator, and there's a number underneath, the denominator, and then there's a line separating the two. And one way we can think about this is that if you consider this is one pizza, and we divide it in two, then it's still one pizza, but because it's divided into two, then you can have, represent this as a fraction, you can have 2 underneath. So the denominator is the number of ways the pizza or whatever has been sliced, has been cut, or divided. So if we look at just one of these slices, and then I put a 1 on top, then this represents a half a pizza, or half of whatever the quantity is. So the number of slices, that's slice number 1, slice number 2, goes at the bottom, and then the slice that we're considering goes at the top. Now, if we're considering both, then this would be 2 over 2. And 2 over 2 is the same as 1, as 2 goes into 2 once. If this is another pizza and we divide it into 4, then these are the slices, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the number of ways the pizza or whatever has been a portion has been cut goes at the bottom. So in this case, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if I take one of these slices, then that would be 1 over 4. And if I were to take 2 slices, 2 over 4. And 2 over 4 is also represented as a half. So these are equivalent fractions. 2 over 4 is the same as 1 over 2. And if I were to be greedy and have 3 of these slices, then it would be 3 over 4. Now there's other ways of showing parts of a whole. So fractions is definitely one, in that it's not the whole thing, but it's part of it. Another way of representing parts of a whole are decimals. So for instance, you could have 0.5, you could have 0.76, any number that is less than 1 would be a decimal in this case, or a fraction of 1. So for instance, if you had the decimal 2.5, that means there's 2 whole pizzas plus another half. So decimals are another way of representing parts of a whole, like fractions. And later we're going to see how you can interchange between fractions and decimals. And the third way are percentages. So 100% is equal to one whole piece of something, let's say a pizza, so 100% would be the whole of that. And then anything less than 100%, so you can have 50%. This is a half, or 25% is a quarter. And of course, any number under 100% shows part of a whole. So I mentioned the term equivalent fractions earlier on when we were looking at this. So this is equivalent to half is the same as 2 over 4. And in this example, this is 1 over 3. So we can make an equivalent fraction from this. We can, for instance, multiply 1 by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. And whatever we do to the figure above this sign, whatever we do to the numerator, we also have to do to the denominator. So we've got to multiply that by 2 as well. And 3 times 2 is 6. So 2 over 6 is the same as 1 over 3. Now, why we should be looking at this is important when we do something later on. So as an example, you might be asked, in this fraction, 3 over 8, the equivalent of 3 over 8 is something over 24. So you've got to work out what this number is. And what has happened to the 8 that has made it into 24? Well, what's happened to the 8 that's made it into 24 is that it has been multiplied by 3. So 3 8s are 24. So knowing that, if we were to multiply 3 by 3, by the same number, then 3 3s are 9, and so we have the fraction 9 over 24. So we could replace the question mark with a 9. So this is how we can obtain equivalent fractions. And as I say, the importance is comes later on.